The last time I had this guy on this podcast, my format was a little bit different, and he has built an amazing platform and shares a lot of wisdom around fitness and faith. And for me, I just really wanted to one up him. And so now I said, well, I talk about fitness and faith, but I also talk about family, fellowship, and future. And so, Christian Huff, welcome to the show. I'm sorry, man. I had to one up you.
I'm honored to be here, man. Thanks for having me. Well, I was confused when I got on here and your shirt was taken off, so I'm glad you put it back on. So I'm glad you exercised some wisdom there.
Oh my gosh, quit that. No, honestly, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing and a lot of the things that I've changed about my fitness habits have to do with things that I've even learned from you. And so even it's funny, I think there was a moment the last time I had you on where you were talking about, you were like, yeah, whether it's, your faith, your family, your fitness, your future. And I'm not even kidding. For some reason that was in my brain. So you may even get some credit for my idea to switch to that. And I also want to give you some praise for a couple other things. I don't look in the mirror when I lift anymore. That's your thing, right?
Come on. Yeah, that's my thing.
And the home gym, it's just blacked out. No mirrors, right?
Blacked out, no mirrors. Yeah.
So I'm doing that. It's like I'll, if you're doing curls or something, people look at me in the gym when I turn my back to the mirror, like, "What are you doing, man?" It's just like, man, talk to Christian. He'll tell you why. The other thing, and this has been actually like super impactful in many ways, is choosing to train for something as opposed to just like working out to try to look as good as possible. And so I remember when you attempted your 500-pound back squat sub 5-minute mile, which we got to get you back there. You were so close. You were so close.
Close.
But I was inspired to see you boldly declare, "Hey, I'm going for this. I'm going to give it my all." And I think one of the things we talked about is, were you working out your upper body maybe as much as you'd like to? Were you maximizing that during that time? Maybe not, but you still looked 90% as to what you could have. But like the way that your mindset was training towards something as opposed to just like trying to look good all the time. I don't know. What was the thought behind that? Because this really inspired me to do the same.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like it's so easy to kind of get caught up in what you look like, especially just with our culture today. It's kind of everywhere. But yeah, I had heard somebody say one time, train for a goal. Don't really necessarily just train for aesthetics. So for me, I had done this. My buddy had signed me up for this weightlifting competition, like I guess almost 2 years ago, and I had back squat at 500, and I had never. That was really the first thing that I'd specifically kind of like trained for. And I had seen a guy do the challenge before, and I was like, well, I'm already kind of halfway there. So let me just dedicate the next 6 months into trying to, run faster and lift heavier, which I'd never done before. And yeah, I set out to do a goal. At that time, I was doing the podcast, and I kind of just wanted something else for myself to, not to necessarily treat it like a job, but almost kind of to treat it like a job, to be, consistent and disciplined and show up for something to try to reap the benefits of it. So yeah, I didn't necessarily get to, do as much bench press as I would have liked to, or curls or chest or whatever. But I was able to just set out for the goal that I wanted to try to achieve. And like you said, I was very close to it. I was 7 seconds off of running the mile in a sub 5. But yeah, who knows if I'll ever train for it again. But it was a good kind of just benchmarker for me to set out for something that's uncomfortable. I don't like to run. So it was that dynamic. It was the uncomfortability of it, but it was also, pushing myself to do something that I didn't know if I was going to be capable of doing.
Well, I think you can do it if you ever want to train for it again. I know you might be getting some jitters thinking about it because I know the running wasn't your most favorite part.
The worst. I got like the worst shin splints ever. So it was. I never went to like the doctor for it, but yeah, it got to the point where some days I couldn't walk. I couldn't move just because my shins would be that bad. Which it sounds like kind of like wimpy to say that, but like I've had a lot of pain in my life, and shin splints have somehow by far been the worst pain because it's terrible.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
Which you said you're training for a half marathon, aren't you?
Yeah.
You haven't had shin splints?
Mm-mm.
Well, you're lucky. Maybe I just have terrible running form.
I don't know, man. It's funny. I know you're boys with Nick Bear. I'm just trying to be him, essentially. Like
Uh-huh.
lifting and running. And I think one of the fears, what held me back for a while, was probably two things. For one, I was like, oh well, I won't be as fast as I could be because I also lift. And then I had this realization that I was like, first off, nobody cares. You're 26. You are far from a professional athlete. No one cares if you're on a half marathon. No one cares what time you run it in. Like, this is not for anybody else. And then also it was like, oh, well, if I'm running, 30, 40, 50 miles a week trying to like go really fast, well, then I may lose some of my muscle. And it's like, who cares? Like, I don't know. So I just loved hearing you say, yeah, my legs became tree trunks during that challenge, which you're still are. I mean, I feel like I'm gonna get some data for everyone who's wondering who follows Christian, because I feel like if I look at your posts of you working out, maybe 9 out of 10 is you just squatting a solid 405. I feel like you crush legs, dude.
I do crush legs, and yeah, 4 or 5 is would be considered light right now. But
Yeah,
but yeah, well, I don't really know why. I feel like squats always just easiest for me to like just a video, and I feel like oftentimes I video it just for form because it's I want to make sure my depth's good and all those different things, and I feel like it's less interesting to video myself if I'm doing you know curls or triceps or something else. So I don't really know. I feel like squats one of those things where I can video myself because I want to check my form out, and I think I want to just kind of benchmark weight that I do in the past and kind of see how it moved throughout the weeks and months. So
that's good.
I feel like that's why I video it the most, just because.
Okay. So you're still crushing the bench and everything in the
Oh
background
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still crushing everything else. I just don't video that part as much.
Hey, well, part of my morning as I was looking through the 4-8-man challenge, I got to watch a video of you on the row machine. I mean, it's great. Dude, on the program, I mean, you've got videos of everything on how to do it. So, I mean, I
Well,
love
I
it, dude.
appreciate it. Well, part of it was probably a little excessive because I had this guy come in town for a weekend who's a good friend, and we knocked out like 18 hours of content over 3 days.
Wow.
So all that to say, we have a bunch more just content coming on YouTube and on Instagram. But yeah, we demoed. Like he kind of just videoed me demoing every single movement throughout the challenge, and some of it, like you said, the rower, it's me doing the rowing machine, which most people probably know what the rower is. Or like one day it's like push-ups, and I demo like what push-ups look like, which it was probably a little excessive, but just for the one person out there who happens to get it because they see something and they don't know what a back squat looks like, or what barbell bench press looks like, or they don't know what a push-up looks like. And then just happen to demo it just in case that one person was confused about it. So
Hey, I
you can
love it.
always Google it, but whatever.
No. I love it. They want to see you doing it. So I don't want to waste any more time because I'm about to give Christian a softball here, because I know that what I'm about to say is something that he's really passionate about. I was telling him before this, the last time I had him on, um, a lot has changed. I mean, you had one kid, I had none. Now you have two, and I have one. Um, I didn't have an Instagram for 6 years. I was kind of that guy that deleted my Instagram because I'm holier than everyone else, but I now have it back and post this on here. And since getting Instagram, because I probably talk about fitness a lot, the algorithms have found me, and so I am very in tune with what is out there, and the culture of lifting now. And I do think there's a lot of positives from it, in that, like, in high school, a lot of guys I knew didn't really touch the weights at all. And sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I would have started this earlier. But when I go to like your average commercial gym, it's just loaded with 16-year-olds that dress the exact same way and do the exact same things that I see these guys online doing. And I get it now. I get it. It's like, oh, wow, this is actually really impacting this generation. Maybe at some level for a pot, like, it's good that they're getting in the gym and everything. But for you, I don't want to spoil it. The 4-8-man, I mean, I feel like I understand that much more the passion behind why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Well, fitness is interesting, especially just if you think about training, right? there's so many nuances to working out, to wanting to be healthy, and all this different things. And I was actually having a conversation yesterday, because if you break it down, I mean, part of working out and part of wanting to be strong for me, even aside from everything I'm doing from the spiritual side of it with the podcast and with the two challenge, it's also just being a protector of my family, right? So,
Hmm.
like you just mentioned, I have two daughters and I have a wife. Um, so I also want to be physically capable to protect them if I ever needed to be. I would hate for a situation to come up and I'm not, the protector that I would like to be, and that could boil down to me not being, physically capable to protect them and to handle them. But yeah, speaking to what you talked about social media, just because it is a fad right now, working out and exercising and um, you know, uh, cut off sleeve T-shirts and all those different things. Which, like you said, I'm not. The thing with the fitness industry is, like you said, I do think that there are a lot of good things to it. I think it's getting people in the gym. I think it's getting people, healthy and fit. But so I'm not here to, speak against everything or really just to discredit everything. But I kind of just view it as a different approach that I like to take to it, just because I have been, years ago in with that same idea of people who, it's only about what I look like. It's every single day I go to the gym. It's I'm going because I want to look better. I'm gonna go ration my food and meal prep and all these different things because I want to look better. I'm not gonna go with my friends out to eat dinner because they're going to a pizza place and I don't want to eat pizza because it's gonna mess up my macros for the day. So I've been in that negative cycle, and it just was it was idolizing for me. It was not healthy. I was blinded to it when people would try to call me out for it, which would make me defensive. So I've just kind of seen that in a cycle in my life. So for me, it's almost like, yes, I think that you can go to the gym and you can, have a desire to look good. I don't think that's necessarily always a bad thing, but I just think it can become dangerous when you make that your whole framework, and everything else kind of falls to the wayside. So with this challenge, and like you've kind of mentioned, it's a 30-day challenge where it's spiritual training and it's physical training. So I always tell people, I'm like, well, if you want to, um, you know, know God more, if you want to have a stronger faith, then you're not just going to exercise it one day a week. And it's the same with our fitness. If you're going to go train for a half marathon, if you're going to go train for some kind of challenge, you're not just going to go running one day a week. I'm not going to go lift weights one day a week and hope that I will reap the benefits of doing that. And it's the same with our faith. It's like if you only have some kind of contact with faith on Sunday, you're probably not going to be very disciplined. You're probably not going to be very strong in it. Um, and I feel like sometimes we, at least for me, I just love seeing the parallels of that. It's if I want to go follow this workout plan and it's going to reach me to a goal, then I'm going to try to in some way do the same thing spiritually. So whether it's me changing the inputs of what I listen to while I'm working out, that's great. Or if I want to go follow a Bible reading plan to build me up stronger, then great, I'm going to do that. It's the same with, doing a workout plan. So I just love looking at the parallels of it of, man, how can I train myself spiritually and how can I train myself physically? And I've just kind of gotten to the point where I do it simultaneously. I have a bunch of people comment on my stuff like, how in the world can you listen to this when you're working out? And I did a post to it the other day because I was realizing a while ago, I'm like, man, I get more fired up listening to these songs talk about pornography and sex and drugs and alcohol. And that gets me more amped up and more fired up and excited more than just, thinking about a slower worship song, but it's bringing me to Jesus. And I kind of just got to where I was like, these inputs are not necessarily change. These are not benefiting, what outputs I want in my life. If you look at the Bible, it talks so much about, you reap what you sow. And so if you want to reap these certain things in your life, then you have to look at what you're sowing. And I think oftentimes it can be bad things that we're sowing and we're expecting to reap different benefits, and you're always gonna reap what you sow. So you have to look
Mm.
inwardly at your life and just see what you're sowing. So yeah, man, all that in a big nutshell of yeah, I'm just trying to encourage people to train physically because I think it's good. I love to work out. I love to, you know, and even in saying that, like I'm also not, I'm not so far to the point. I mean, I do enjoy looking good, right? I mean, we're humans. I mean, I enjoy being in good shape. I enjoy my wife saying, "Hey, you look really good." Like, I enjoy all those things, but I'm not necessarily waking up and I'm not like, that's not my whole end goal of what I'm striving every day to do is to, you know, cut my body fat down and to try to get bigger muscles. That's not the end goal. It can be a byproduct of what you're doing, but
Mm.
I think when it becomes the end goal, I just think it can become dangerous for people.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned this in a video the other day, but like, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger was around a long time ago, and I know that even bodybuilding was around before him, but I think that he was a pretty pivotal person in kind of getting in the gym and, you know, lifting kind of like we do and everything. And so people have done it for a long time, but I mean, I could be wrong because I wasn't on like TikTok and Instagram and all that, but like as these things have blown up, like reels and all that, probably since what, 2020, like COVID ish, do
Yeah,
you feel like I would love to see some numbers on the high school, the college guys that are getting in and lifting? Like I remember going back to my fraternity after I graduated in 2020, like 3 years later, and like the average freshman and sophomore was jacked. And my first thought was, dang, like good for these guys. And good for them that they learned that you can go in the gym and they started eating protein and lifting and everything like that. But like, I wonder, like, would you say, do you feel like this is kind of a new developing thing right now, or it's just kind of the thing to do?
I do. Well, I love that you bring that post up because, um, if at least for me, and like you just said, I could be wrong on this, but the pulse that I kind of get from it, I feel like when Arnold and all those guys were kind of starting, I still kind of feel like their demographic was people around their age. I still feel like it was, you know, maybe late college throughout 20s. I kind of feel like that was, more so the demographic. And I feel like now with social media, it's kind of, I think the age has just digressed, throughout the years to where you have 12, 13-year-old kids who are, getting serious about lifting and wanting to take all these different supplements and all those different things. So I do think that social media has had an effect on it from that standpoint of, I think it's just lowered the bar for age, compared to when Arnold and all those people were doing that stuff,
Mm,
30, 40 years ago.
yeah.
And I think even for me, I'm the first to say it. Like I have a gym at my house now, which has been great, just for a time standpoint. But for the last 4 years, I've been working out at one of our local gyms here, and yeah, something that I'll wrestle with is just cynicism because I'll see these middle school, high school kids, and it can just really just make me mad. But I'm also like, but then again, like this is the people that I'm trying to preach to. Uh, but then it'll like make me mad when I see them with their jugs of water and tripods and wife beater t-shirts. So it's like that's the thing for me that I've had to wrestle with. It's you know it frustrates me, but it's also like I don't want to get to I don't want it to get to a point where it's like the you know it frustrates me to where it's like I can't even minister to it just because it makes me mad. So I've had to deal with
Yeah.
things in my own heart because I can be quick to judge people in those situations and all those different things instead of um being more gracious to it and less less frustrating just because
Yeah.
I've seen that in my life to where I can be quick to kind of be cynical towards things like that and then feel like God kind of prompts me in the moment and it's like this is literally the crowd that you're trying to reach and I'd be like, oh yeah, that is the crowd that I'm trying to reach. So it's all those
Yeah.
different things, but
Yeah.
yeah, I've wrestled with that a pretty good bit.
Well, I know right now y'all are going through James on your podcast. Is that right? Okay,
Yep.
that's what I thought. And I know one of the ones the other day was about being in the world but not of it, and it makes me think about like the credibility and influence that you will have on this subject because you are 4 times the size of the kid with the tripod in the gym is a lot, you know? And so I think that a lot of times it's easy in life, and this doesn't have to be about fitness, but just to sit back and, oh, these people, why are they living this way? Or one thing that I've seen like in the professional world, an example to bring this into like more of a corporate environment. There's a guy that wrote a book called The Edge. It's actually behind me, and he talked about how like after growing up in the church and being a Christian, he got a job at an accounting firm, and he thought that the pathway to career success and like being a leader that people looked up to and everything was his character. He was like, it's all about my character, which is very true. Like if you don't have good character and for the way that we're talking, if you're not following God, then like maybe some things could fall apart. But what he said is his boss then later told him, he said, hey man, you're a really good guy, but I hired you to be a really good auditor. Like you need to be a good accountant. And what he found was, oh, the fastest way to gain credibility and influence with the people that I'm trying to impact is competence and character. And so like for you, it's like you, and I'm kind of preaching to anyone else listening that may be passionate about a subject. It's like you have the authority, if you will, to say, hey, like I love this fitness stuff. Like I can squat 5 times as much as you, but it's not about that, you know? And so I think you're doing it right, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. So for me, what I've found, kind of piggybacking off what you just said, fitness is just a hobby. Some people make it to be a job. It's kind of what I've kind of grown to do with it, but it's still just a hobby. Same with running. Training for a half marathon. Same with golf or hunting or whatever. I was never good at English. Maybe whatever adjective you can put there that might be the correct one. But whatever you put there, God's put those desires in your heart. Like I like working out because I had a background with sports. Like I used to not enjoy working out, and I just wanted to focus on sports. And then when I stopped playing sports, I liked working out. So it was kind of a reverse thing for me. I think I would have been a lot better at my sport if I enjoyed working out as much as I do now then. But one of my just favorite stories throughout in the Bible is just when Jesus calls Peter fishing, because Peter was a fisherman. That's what half of the disciples that Jesus called were expert fishermen. And when he met Peter fishing, he obviously caught a bunch of fish. So Jesus gained credibility with Peter because Peter had been fishing all night, didn't catch any fish. Here Jesus pulls up 100 and so odd fish. I can't remember the exact number. And Peter, falls on his knees and says that you are the Lord. But Jesus gained that credibility because, Peter was a fisherman. Here they hadn't caught any fish. Here Jesus just, puts his little finger in the water and they catch a ton of fish. So all that to say, but then he speaks to Peter in terms that he'll understand. So he says, you'll be a fisher of men, which we think that maybe sounds weird, but if you're a fisherman, then you know that you're going to go catch people the same way you go catch fish. So all that to say, Jesus met Peter in what his mission was, which was fishing, his job. So for a lot of people, fishing can be a hobby, can also be a job. So he met Peter in what that was, and then he gave him the ultimate mission. So speaking to what you just said about credibility, I feel like you have to find what you enjoy doing, hobbies or whatever it is, and just see your lanes to do ministry in. So for me, I love working out. I like fitness. I think it's fun to train for things. And, if I want to do that, then I'm going to have some kind of credibility in it. I mean, the amount of conversations that I've gotten with people at the gym, just because, like you said, I have been squatting 5 times more than them, and they come up and ask those questions. And then we get into a deep conversation about faith because I gained that credibility. But if I'm over there trying to back squat and I'm struggling with 135, no one's going to come up and want to talk to me about fitness. And it's the same with running. It's like if you run a 6:30, minute per mile pace on a half marathon, somebody might want to come up and talk to you. If you are a scratch golfer and you're at the driving range and you can hit it really far, people might want to come up and talk to you. So I say all that to say, whatever your hobbies are, I think you have to just try to be good at them. Try to find ways to minister to people in what you enjoy doing. And it doesn't have to be a hobby. It can be your actual job. You just talked about accounting. So if you're an accountant, be the best accountant that you can be. And when people ask you about it, you can actually tell them, what the actual mission is. It's not just about, figuring out numbers for people, but it's about relationships that I build with people while doing it. So I just I think sometimes we can overcomplicate ministry and think it's a pulpit or it's Sunday or it's, pastors and preachers, but it's actually, we're all called to be the church. You know, the church, I mean, if you look at ACC, it's the church without walls. So church is, I mean, even biblically, it was not even necessarily a building, it was a movement. The word used in the New Testament actually means movement. So it's not even necessarily, a building, but it's a people. And if you look at Acts, it's, people in the community were sharing, and they said that they had everything in common. So it's less about, you know, church, because I think when you make it all about church, then it's all about the preaching, and it's not always about the preaching, but it's about, the rest of your week, your whole life. What does it look like? How are you glorifying God in everything you do? And I just say that to say, we're all meant to do ministry. It looks different for a lot of us, but it's we're not all gonna preach. We're not all gonna sing. I can't sing to save my life, and I'm not the most articulate when I try to give a message. So I like doing one-on-one stuff more. So, and I try to, glorify God and trying to lift heavy weights. So, find what you're passionate about doing and just invite God into that, and that's your ministry. So I think sometimes we can just overcomplicate it when it's not meant to be. We're all meant. My voice just cracked. We're all meant to go make disciples. If you look at the Great Commission, it's not exclusive to a certain people, or a job title or whatever. We're all called to go do what He's called us to do. So don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah. Fire me up, dude. And hey, I tried to make a joke in front of my entire company the other day, and my voice cracked when I did it. So
Don't let it out. Keep that in there. Keep my voice track on there.
No, we're keeping it in. This is real and raw right here, dude. But I love what you said. I think it was actually Miles a couple months ago, preached something along the lines of like, he's like, look, I would love for you to bring your friend here. Great. But it's not like if our church becomes the church where every single person here, if just the goal is, oh, we just got to get them to church. We just got to get them to church. I feel like that's kind of what we were taught growing up. And so much of your mission field is across from somebody at a table in your house or at the gym or on the golf course, And so like there's a few people in my life that like, there's no shot that they would come to church if I asked them. But have I gotten to spiritual conversations through doing their thing with them, or through maybe me having credibility in a certain area that they respect, and then that leading to a spiritual conversation? Yes. And so I think that's where, as Christians, it's like the job is not just inviting someone to church necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to have credibility in everything you do, to an extent, especially. I just love that, because you really can minister to people if you have some kind of commonality. Like you said, there's so many people who will never step in foot of church, but they'll go run 6 miles with you, and you can have. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be spiritual. I think sometimes we can even, do that too far, to where it's like sometimes people just have to see the fruit of your life to actually be interested. You don't always have to necessarily shove Jesus down somebody's throat, but you can just, have joy when situations are difficult, or, be kind to the waiter when she hasn't brought you a refill of water in 20, like, to me, there's all these different things that you can, exercise your faith in, that I think oftentimes speak louder than you just trying to like preach to somebody all the time. So I think your fruit sometimes has to just speak for itself.
Yeah.
An apple tree is they're not telling everyone, hey, I have apples. They just have apples, and it's people just see that. So I think sometimes with us, it's like we can get so caught up telling people about the fruit in our lives instead of just letting the fruit speak for itself. So
it's good, man. Well, I may have a little confession moment here, because I think what I'm about to say will resonate with a lot of people listening, and we'll see what you have to say back. I was reading over 1 Timothy 4:8 this morning, just thinking about it, because I know that's like that's kind of the the foundation with which you're sharing a lot of your wisdom here. And so for those who've never read it, it's physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. And one of the things that I preach a lot, whether this is like spiritually or honestly, I think that it's an area of growth for me to think about it spiritually, which is the most important area. But a lot of the times I preach like be long-term greedy, like play the long game and think about the future, think about the end, think about where you'll be in 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now. Yet I think that I have a lot of room to grow when it comes to like physical fitness. And what I mean by that is like we know, and I agree that training yourself spiritually is far more important now and in the future than physical training. Yet because idolatry of approval for me, I worry so much about like looking good right now, where at sometimes if I'm not careful, I can like over prioritize the fitness side of things because I'm like, well, nobody can like really see my heart, they just see what I look like on the outside. But I wonder what my 80-year-old self that's sore from over squatting or my life that's going on into eternity would say to myself right now, who's struggling with kind of the short term. Any
Yeah,
thoughts
well,
there?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I feel like, at least for me, um, you know, first off, who knows if you'll even make it to 80, right?
Yeah.
You know, Jesus can come back tomorrow. That's kind of how I view a lot of things, whether it's, and that doesn't really necessarily mean like flippantly, but I mean, even certain financial situations, I'm like, I don't mean Jesus could come back in 2 years, and I don't want to hoard money. It's the same with relationships. It's the same with fitness. Like, my dad tells me that often. Your legs are gonna hurt so bad when you're older. But I'm also like, I mean, but I might not even make it to 80. I mean, Jesus literally could come back in 10 years, and it's like I'll be 35. Um, so that's one thing. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like you said, it's a lot easier for me to wake up in the morning, to go work out than it is for me to have a quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
That's just with. I feel like that's just human. I don't know. Maybe some people are wired to wake up at 4 a.m. and just, go sit in their prayer closet for an hour, and that's just not me. Maybe that would be me if I went to bed at 8 o'clock and didn't have two kids who were up all night. Maybe, I don't really know. But that's just where I'm at. So for me, like I said, really since having kids, like the gym time for me has kind of become that moment and that time where, sometimes I'm working out, I'll just have the Bible app read to me, and or it's worship or it's a sermon. So it's like it's combining that time. But yeah, no, it's far more easier for me to physical train than it is for me to spiritual train. But I do think that there is something there of being like cognitively aware of that, to where
Mm-hmm.
you can try to adapt things. I think the pitfall you get in is where you're not aware of it, to where you kind of can become blind to it. But then again, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you are aware of it and you keep kind of neglecting it. So it's kind of a catch-22. But yeah, no, I mean, I think about that all the time. If I get old and I can't walk because I squatted a bunch, but I don't know. I don't think about the future too much of that, because I do think that Jesus can come back sooner than we think. So I
Yeah.
don't know. That's just kind of what I think. So I don't try to put too much stock into my joints in the next 60 years. So
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I'm that worried about it either. So amen to that. I think it's just more of like it. My struggle with seeking approval from other people. I think my flesh says, well, the character box, like you're good on that. Like you can, even if your heart's in the wrong place, you can fake it in front of people, but like you can't fake the way that you look. And so that's probably like the lie. I mean, that's why I think both are super important. But I think the lie that I often believe is that, or I don't believe it, but my actions may say that physical training is more important than spiritual. And it's absolutely not more important. But I think if I'm not careful, I can definitely fall into that.
yeah, no, well, just because it can be easier it can be easier to do it. It can be easier to be disciplined to it, but it's also easier. You can kind of see the benefits of it more, right? Like faith
Yeah.
and spirituality, a lot of times it takes, endurance, it takes suffering, it takes perseverance, it takes, all these different things to where, um, and we're not ever going to be where we want to be. We're always going to, have room to grow. We're always going to be striving to look more like Jesus. So I feel like it is, but it almost is because you necessarily don't see the benefits like you can from a
Yeah.
physical standpoint of, my being more vascular or whatever. Like whatever your goal is, it can be easier to see the benefits versus spiritually. It's like it takes a longer time to kind of see the benefits from it. But I mean, I just don't think any 80, 90-year-old out there, wherever they're at right now, I just feel like when you get to that age, no one's saying, "Man, I wish I would have worked out harder when I was younger." I feel like looking forward, I just feel like the answer would be, "I wish I would have spent more time with Jesus," or "I wish I would have went to church more. I wish I would have read my Bible more." So I think when you get to that age, I think it lends itself to spiritual things and not, and maybe there might be a small minority of people who, are maybe in terrible shape, and then maybe
Mhm.
they're the outlier that's like, I wish I would have worked out more. But I think a healthy population that makes it to 90, I think if they're believers, I think they would wish that they would have trained themselves spiritually more than they. I think that would be the regret looking back. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's good, man. I agree. Well, as we're closing out, I think we should get super practical with how you encourage people to work out. And the easy answer would be to get that 4-8 man challenge, because that gives it to you. It's right there, and I can vouch for it. I haven't started it yet because I'm training for this half marathon, but I have it. I've read it. It's great. But like a couple of things I've learned from Christian. I said this earlier. It's like when you're lifting, don't look in the mirror. Don't make it about yourself. Another would be listen to worship music. And I'm with you. It's like 5 years ago, I probably would have been like, oh, I can't listen to that. That doesn't fire me up. But now it's like some of the music I used to listen to, if I hear it in my ears, I just feel gross. It's like I just can't even like listen to that anymore. And then the third, and then I'm gonna ask you a question, would be find something to train for. Because like maybe from a physical standpoint, you may not come out of that 3-month training period looking quite as good if it's like a running thing or something. But like I think you can have a much healthier mindset there. But I may ask you this, like, yeah, obviously the 4-8 man challenge, like get that. It gives you a devotional, and I want you to tell us about it. But then also, this is something that you've been doing far before you created this. Like I remember the first time I had you on, like maybe walk us through what does a workout look like to you? How are you keeping your mind in a healthy place? How are you talking to God? Especially now that you have a kid, it's like 2 kids, that is kind of your time away. So maybe some practical things that can help our listeners.
yeah, no, that's good. Man, my voice is cracked again. I'm also sick. We're kind of sick.
Hey,
We
you're
got
good. You're good.
we got a ton of pollen here right now, so I need to take a Zyrtec or a Claritin. Um, yeah. So honestly, I mean, like you said, the gym is a place where I can go in, and I think that's also too. It's like that's why I really don't work out with people often, because I just view that as, just kind of my time by myself, because I am always with people. We have 2 kids in the house and I'm married, so there's always something going on. So I rarely am just sitting on the couch drinking a cup of coffee, reading my Bible, and that's not because I wouldn't want to, but it's because I have, Teletubbies on the TV, or Paw Patrol on the TV, or a kid screaming, or a diaper, or a diaper to change, or a house that's a mess to clean. So it's you know, so I've kind of, lent the gym has kind of lent itself to that being a time where I can go kind of just get away and go be by myself. But also like when I'm in the truck, like when I'm just driving, it's almost, it's just a time of prayer. It's solitude. I'm not thinking about a ton of things. I'll worship, I'll pray. And so for me, especially with kids and just kind of the stage of life that we're at, the gym and my car has been the biggest time where I've kind of you know uh, devoted my time into really kind of focusing on that. And especially, I mean, if the kids go down early, I might read a little bit, but typically I'll read when I'm up here at the office, or when I'm just in my truck, or when I'm just oftentimes I'll listen to audio of the Bible when I'm working out. Um, So that is one thing, and obviously when I was in college, I had a lot more discipline of a quiet time, and because I was single, or now, well, I was single for half of college, but I didn't have kids and I wasn't married and all those different things. So
Yet college kids,
the dynamic
including
was,
myself, yeah, no, I know it's changed. Sorry, I interrupted you. I'm just
yeah,
saying
you're good.
it's hilarious. When I was in college, I was like, oh, I'm so busy, and it's like, no, you're not. Like now, having a kid's like, no, you're not. But
Yeah,
anyways, keep going.
yeah. So and then like I said, I've had the podcast for the last, I started back in 2021. And the hope of the podcast really was just to train people physically and spiritually. And now for me, it's almost like it's kind of just like a foot in the door of, like you said, we're going through the book of James on my podcast right now. So we're not even talking about anything really physically. It's just spiritually. So it's almost like that foot in the door of, you know, have the credibility for fitness, like you talked about, and get people drawn in, and then they come in, and then it's like you open up the door and it's all spiritual. It's like some physical, but it's like, the spirituality of it far outweighs, the physical things that we talk about. And then that's why I wanted to do the challenge. So we talked about it a lot, but if you're interested in that, you can check it out I have a website, so it's 48.men. And it's a 30-day PDF challenge where it's each day there's a verse of the day, and then there's a devotional that I wrote that pairs that goes with what the verse of the day is, and then there's a workout. And so for 30 days, each workout of the day pairs numerically with what the verse of the day is. So, for example, the first day is John 21:15. So day one's a 21 minute EMOM. So every minute on the minute, it's 15 reps of 3 different exercises. So my hope of it is that it's each day almost ends with like a challenge too, right? So it's almost like while you're working out, you're thinking about your this question of like, where am I at with my faith? How am I living it out? And it's even for people too. It's like, if you're listening to this and you hate working out, I still think it can be a great resource for you, because I truly believe in these devotionals. I spent me like 10 months, kind of cultivating all of it, writing all of it. So I'm super passionate about the devotionals, even aside from the workouts. I think the workouts are cool because, I think while you're training yourself physically, you can be thinking about these spiritual truths that we just kind of talked about in the Devo. But for example, like one day, I can't really remember what day it is, but one day it's called Silver Coins. So each day it's titled something. In the devotional, it's all about it's where Judas betrays Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. So the day is called Silver Coin. But if you read that, it can seem not really relatable, or you can't really understand that. But if if you research it, like, a common slave at that time was sold for 30 pieces of silver. So the idea of, so Judas betrayed Jesus for the same amount of money as what a common slave would have been sold for. So the Son of God, the Savior of the world, but obviously this was prophesied in the Old Testament. But so he was sold for 30 pieces of silver. So I write this Devo about, you might not necessarily be able to relate to that or understand what that means, but from our life now, it just means like, what are you selling Jesus for that's less than his value, right? So it's, what are you doing that that diminishes that? Are you exchanging a pornography addiction for Jesus? Are you engaging in idolatry? Are you having an affair? Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol? Like, it's like, so these things, it's like, what are you doing that, like, you're exchanging it for Jesus, right? It doesn't necessarily seem like it, but no, whatever decision that you're making, you're choosing that over Jesus. So it's, it can be super simple things like screen time or wanting a new car or a new house. It's like things that don't seem like a big deal, but you're thinking about it more than Jesus. So I kind of just write this Devo on, like, Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And it's like, what are you betraying Jesus for? Is it X, Y, and Z? And it's just, look at your life. So while you're doing this workout, you're thinking about, how am I actually living my life? It's not, and that's why I talk about the mirror so much, because I think it can be easy to to look at yourself when you're working out, instead of like, thinking about deeper things. So my hope of the PDF is that it's like, while you're working out, because while you're working out, typically your brain's kind of shut off. You're kind of in the zone, and it can be easy to be thinking about your life in those moments. So instead of thinking about your life from a worldly standpoint, you can be thinking about it from a spiritual standpoint. So each day kind of ends with like a challenge almost, and my hope is that while you're working out or while you're exercising, whatever that looks like, you're kind of thinking about the devotional today and the verse today, and it's almost challenging you to look at how you're living your life. So it's kind of the
It's
hope of
good,
it.
brother. That is good. I'm looking at some of the titles: Wooden Idol, Kingdom Chasers, Ocean Holder. I'm giving it all away for free. Father's House, Narrow Road, dude. This is good. And even the silver coin, man. I've never even like thought about it that way. That's so good. The only downside is, and this happened. I can be kind of an emotional person. Like I'm the first person to like tear up if like a worship song starts playing. So if I'm ever like lifting and like a part that just gets me on a song comes on, I almost have to be careful because I'll like drop the weights on myself. Like, oh, so good. So I don't know, for my emotional people out there, be mindful of that. But dude, I mean, this is good. I'm feeling challenged and fired up, and I've already got like a couple buddies I'm just excited to send this to. So Christian, appreciate you coming on, man. I know here I talk about like the purpose of the podcast is I say it's to help ambitious young professionals learn to lead themselves. That's a fancy way of really I talk about these different F's, starting with faith, really the foundation of like following God, and I talk about fitness and all this other stuff too. But I think a lot of people really are like asleep at the wheel of their own life. And so for some people, maybe they need to wake up for the first time. And for you and me, a lot of what that would look like would be a spiritual transformation. That's what I would really hope for. But I think also every morning we have to make that decision to like wake up and lead yourself and follow God and not think about yourself. And so that I'm kind of making this for myself. So that's why it's called that. And so I love for my guests to tell people to wake up and lead. So are we ready?
We're ready for it.
All right. It's time for you and me
To wake up and lead.
Let's go.
Thank you.